What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the CK Podcast. It is presented by Power Hands, so make sure and get yourself a pair of gloves and get your handles right, because I got my handles right. Christopher knows that. Welcome, Christopher, contributor, reporter for Cowbell Kingdom and Sixer Sense. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I've been trying to get you on, man, because you're a big time Mo Bamba fan. I'm really not. So we'll get into the whole Mo Bamba discussion. But before we do that, what happened to your Sixers, bro?
Yeah, I don't know, man. That was kind of a disappointing end. But, with all the good things that happened this season, it's hard to kind of stay disappointed. But obviously, you would have liked for it to end better. But you move
So
on.
so out of obviously there were plenty of reasons why they lost 4-1, but to you, what was the biggest takeaway to why they lost that entire series?
I think Boston, more than almost any other team, was just really well equipped to exploit some of their biggest weaknesses, like wing depth. Obviously, Bellinelli and Reddick are defensive liabilities, and when you have guys like Tatum, Smart, Brown, who can kind of take them into the post, who are more athletic, can handle the ball, it's going to be really tough to stop them.
That is true, but I kind of want to dig deep into Ben Simmons, and I'm not like the guy that has been self-proclaiming him as the next LeBron James or even the next Magic Johnson, but
Yeah,
a lot of the national media really has, and I think that kind of hurt him in the second round. And when you have a genius of a coach like a Brad Stevens, he understood how to really clamp down on him. And I kept saying all year long, people kept saying, well, Ben Simmons put up these amazing stats without having a jump shot. And they really treated that to me as a positive. And to me, it was like, whoa, no, no. He needs to have a jump shot, as opposed to saying he can do all this without that. My thing was, well, he really needs to shoot and even and just keep the defense honest by attempting a couple shots. And he didn't do that. And when you have a good team like the Celtics, they exploited that deficiency. And well, we saw a couple of bad games from Ben Simmons.
yeah, I agree. I think moving forward, that has to be kind of towards the top of his priority list. He needs to improve his finishing too, which is something Brett Brown touched on during his exit interview. But I think with Simmons, the priority has to be kind of just expanding his game. And also, I think the Sixers need to have another ball handler. Like you saw in Game 4 when TJ McConnell got put into the starting lineup, that was easily their best game. Because having somebody who can kind of take the pressure off of Simmons, let him work off the ball some as a cutter, let him post up some, that's another way to kind of get him involved without having him handle the ball every time down the court, which is kind of why they won Game 4 and why they almost won Game 5. Because I think Game 5 might have been Simmons' best overall game in the series.
Why is it that Markel Fultz didn't play and in like in any games, and you talked about having a secondary ball handler? That's why they drafted him. That's why they gave
Yeah,
up so much for
yeah.
him. What
I'm still
what happened?
yeah, I'm still optimistic that long term Fultz will kind of figure things out, but I just really don't think he was ready because he played the first game and a half or so in the Miami series, and their physicality kind of threw him off. He wasn't really willing to take shots, kind of dribbled into some bad turnovers, and I just don't think he was ready for playoff defenses. I think that's really what it comes down to. McConnell was more poised, he was kind of more ready for the situation. So I think Brett kind of leaning on him instead of Fultz was the right situational decision at that point. But hopefully next season with another summer of work and stuff, Fultz will kind of get some more run, start
Right
improving.
on, right on. So the final four, uh, we have all contestants: the Celtics, Cavs, Warriors, Rockets. Kind of what we all suspected when that big Kyrie Irving trade happened, right? But we didn't see it unraveling this way,
Yeah,
and the way it's happened. But those were essentially the four teams that we thought were going to be in the final four. They begin on Sunday and Monday, so I can't wait for that. Do you feel like the Celtics have a true fighting chance to beat the Cavaliers, because I really do. I actually have them beating the Cavs in 7 games.
I wouldn't go as far as to bet on them winning, but I think they have a better chance than maybe some people would give them, just because they have a lot of guys who can still hurt you. Tatum, Brown, Rozier, Horford have all been playing really good basketball. They go 6 or 7 deep in guys who can really hurt you off the dribble, kind of have their own moments during games, and their defense is obviously spectacular. Cleveland's depth, even with how well Love and Korver played last series, is still kind of iffy. So I think they have a chance, but I'm not betting against LeBron yet. I would still say Cavs in 5 or 6. But I do think the Celtics are going to put up a fight. I don't think it's going to be a sweep or anything like that.
Well, I have the Celtics winning because I just don't trust LeBron's counterparts, his teammates. I don't believe that it's sustainable for, J.R. Smith, Jordan Clarkson, and even George Hill to hit the amount of threes that they did hit against the Raptors. They were more of themselves in that Pacer series. A lot of people want to say that, well, they're kind of becoming a more cohesive unit with more experience, but I don't buy it. I don't trust those guys. And for that fact, when you do face a coach who has enough assets to throw at you and game plan against you like a Brad Stevens, I just think coaching will beat this LeBron-less talented team. I mean, it's not the same Cavaliers that he's had the past 2 years, man. And people want to act like it is, but it really isn't. Again, I have the Celtics winning in 7. I think LeBron will do his best, his heroics to really bypass his team. But regardless, if they do win, they're going to get swept by either the Rockets or the Warriors. But if it's the Celtics, I do see the Celtics being more competitive because of matchups and because how well they're able to throw their athletic wings at either the Rockets or the Warriors. So the end result will be the same. Whoever wins out of the Rockets and the Warriors will be NBA champions. But it's kind of like that Lakers-Kings series in 2002 when they were going to face the Nets. Like, whoever won that series, we knew we're going to be champions no matter what. But in terms of just a recreational basketball fan and just a basketball fan in general, I feel like the Celtics have the best shot to make the series competitive. And if last year was any indication of what the Cavs are going to do this year, I think it's going to be a lot worse. And I just don't want to see that matchup again, man. I'm tired of seeing LeBron and the Warriors and him just ultimately losing. I think it's going to hurt his legacy, and hopefully it doesn't happen. But I do want to talk about the NBA draft. I have my big board. You have your big board. Give me your top 3 overall players in the 2018 NBA class, and we'll go from there.
My top 3?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. My number 1, I've kind of gone back and forth on it, but at this point, I think I lean Doncic just because of what he's done overseas. You don't normally see that out of 18-year-olds against, the second best league in the world behind the NBA. He's solid enough to play a few different positions. He's an elite playmaker. He can play off the ball, on the ball, do a lot of really good things with the ball. So I think I lean Doncic number 1. Ayton's obviously a close number 2. Can't really blame anyone who takes Ayton number 1. Polished post scorer, obviously an elite athlete who, if he can kind of polish off his defensive instincts, is going to be one heck of a player. And then my number 3 would be Bagley, just because of upside and athleticism. He's kind of a once-in-a-generation type athlete in the post. He can already do stuff off the dribble. He's a high motor, so at the very worst, you're getting a really good rebounder who can finish stuff at the rim. He showed a bit of a jump shot toward the end of the season at Duke, so for upside, I would have Bagley 3rd.
Right on. That's roughly what the consensus is, right, nationwide. But I think I'm going to shock you, and I'm going to go with Luka 1, Jaren Jackson 2, and Ayton number 3 with the Trae Young close to a number 4. I don't have Bagley in my top, I don't know, 6, 7, I believe. I'm not very high on him, man. and I'm not very high on Bamba either. I'm curious to see where Bamba ranks on your big board. But going back to your list, I agree 100%. Luka Doncic to me is the best playmaker, hands down. The guy can do it all. He's a pick and roll savant. We keep saying that, and he just turned 19, right? And
Yeah.
you know, I can't wait to watch this kid play. Right now, as what we know is that he's at least 6'8", and when they do it, when I watch him play and when he stands next to guys who are relatively, to similar size, and we know their measurements, he looks taller at times. So I'm curious to see if he does come in at 6'9", 6'10" already. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But I believe he has the ability to play all three positions at the NBA level: the point, the shooting guard, and the small forward, which is why he's my number one prospect in this draft. I think the versatility and the way this league is heading into just a shooting and offensive oriented league. I think he has all of that, man. And his toughness, and he is a basketball prodigy. He's been playing at such a young age, and the fact that he got to play with a guy who he was a water boy for, and the Dragon from the Heat, that was just such a cool story from Mike Schmitz from ESPN. And then ESPN just came out with another big story on Luka, and you kind of dive into his mindset, and I personally love it. I think he's mentally tough, and he's playing against grown men, which will really help him in the long run. And a lot of people are afraid to have him as number one because they don't have enough coverage and they haven't watched him a lot. But I keep saying this, and I want to get your take on it. But I feel like if he was playing in college basketball, he'd be just as big as Trae Young.
Yeah, he'd be hands down the best player in college basketball, I think. Like, he's been doing MVP caliber stuff against full
Right.
grown. Like, the competition in college isn't anywhere near what he's faced. So 100% agree.
So with Trae Young, I have him pretty high on my list. Again, I think he's the closest thing to Luka Doncic in terms of feel for the game, that offensive pick and roll savant, a guy who can make passes with either hand. He really exploits defenses with his incredible vision on the court. What do you see Trae Young as in the long run? Not right off the bat, because he might struggle right off the bat, much like Steph Curry did when he came into the league, especially since he's a lot younger than Steph Curry. In terms of experience, what do you see him as in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to come up with like a direct NBA comp, but I do have Trae Young pretty high on my board. I think he's easily, outside of Doncic, depending on how you classify him. I think Young's easily the top point guard. A lot of people have kind of this misguided view on him that he's just like a shot checker and he doesn't pass the ball. And that's all, that's just really not true. He's easily the best passer outside of Doncic. His pick and roll vision, like you mentioned, is elite. He's a really good playmaker. And I think once he gets in the NBA and people can run him off the ball more, kind of give him a greater variety of looks, I think his shooting is going to be a really dangerous weapon for whatever offense he's in. Defense will be an issue. He's kind of small, kind of thin. So I don't know if he'll ever be a plus defender, but his offensive value easily has the potential to be just as high as anyone else in this class.
People are on the text line right here. They're saying that if I and you would really take Luka Doncic over DeAndre Ayton, and I can honestly look you guys in the eyes and say, yes, I would. If I was a GM, I would take him over DeAndre Ayton. I'm not sold on Ayton, on a couple of levels, and we'll get into that. But would you take Luka over Ayton if you had the number one pick?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, part of it is team fit and stuff, but in most cases, I would take Doncic number one without any hesitance.
That's what I'm talking about, man. And do you think with the new hire that Phoenix made, if they do ultimately end up getting number one, does that make it much easier for them to bypass Aiden and select Luca?
Yeah, I think having a coach that Doncic knows that can kind of help him adjust to the NBA would definitely be a plus. So I definitely think if Phoenix does end up getting number one, that Doncic is a pretty high possibility, especially if they're going to chase Clint Capella in the offseason, which there was a story a day or two ago about them maybe giving Capella a max offer sheet. So that would make it an even easier decision.
Wow, I didn't see that, but that actually would make a lot of sense. Then you would have Booker, Doncic, Josh Jackson, and Capella. A very,
Yeah.
very nice young nucleus there to build on something. That man, that actually sounds pretty damn good.
Yes.
And or I'll say this too. What if they go after DeMarcus Cousins? Then what?
That both Kentucky guys, so I'm sure they'd get along. I think that I don't know if they're quite at the point where a big star like DMC is gonna come join them, but that would be a really intriguing group for sure.
So would you rather have DMC or Capella? If you draft Doncic at number one.
Yeah, well, maybe in terms of long term value, you might want Capella, just because DMC is coming off a pretty serious knee injury,
Right.
and he's a bit older than Capella, so I might lean toward Capella in that sense. Especially if you have playmakers like Jackson and Doncic who can kind of run the floor, kind of do some of the same stuff that Houston does with him.
That's interesting. Yeah. And the only reason why I asked is because obviously when you come off an Achilles injury, you never know how you're going to come back. And especially to a big man, such a large human being like a DeMarcus Cousins, we don't know how he's going to react to certain things. And, you know, if I'm the Pelicans, I'm afraid to max him out for 5 years. So I think if they bypass him to try to, you know, build some equity in the long term to sign Anthony Davis, that's the right move, man. And you know, Phoenix is looking to land a star. They have the money to at least offer one max sheet, and I believe DeMarcus wants to get paid. Having experience with DeMarcus here, I feel like doesn't matter the team. If someone's going to offer him a long-term max contract, he's going to take it. So let's talk about. A lot of people are mentioning Bamba and Michael Porter. We'll get to those two. But let's get to Bamba first, man. What do you like about him? Why are you so high on him?
I think it's kind of hard to find defensive cornerstones nowadays. And, he's obviously raw on the offensive end. He's not going to give you much there, at least early on. But he has shown improvements in his jump shot in some of the videos we've seen lately. And I think just a guy with his defensive upside, he'd be the longest player in the NBA once he got drafted. Like, it's kind of hard to pass that up. I think he has the chance to be one of the elite rim protectors in the league. And I think there's a lot of value in that people kind of overlook because he's not the flashy offensive player, or maybe his stats aren't as impressive as Aiton's or Bagley's. But I think he's right up there in terms of long term potential, and a lot of that comes back to defense.
So you see him as JaVale McGee, and the question is, do you draft JaVale McGee in the top 10 in this class?
No, I think he's way. I think his defensive ceiling is way beyond what JaVale's is. Like maybe offensively there are some comparisons, but I wouldn't say defensively that he's comparable to McGee.
Really, JaVale McGee, when he's on, man, I mean, he's a force to be reckoned with on defense. Like if he stays down and he doesn't bite on that pump fake, it's really difficult to actually score on him. We saw a lot with the Spurs every time. Like all he has to do is literally keep his hands up, and the rest will take care of itself. So that's what I think. Honestly, how much better? I think my thing is with Bamba, how much better is Bamba than last year's Texas Longhorn and Jared Allen, who also came out and was drafted in the 20s? Like, I don't see that much of a difference besides his enormous wingspan, which might be about 4 inches more than Jared Allen, if I'm not mistaken. So, and then when I just look at his overall defense, he's very slow laterally, and he won't be able to keep up in space against other quick guards. He couldn't keep up with quick guards in college. So that's where I see a guy like Jaren Jackson, who I'm high on, who to me is a much better defender and a much better shot blocker per minute. So that type of guy whose instincts are off the chart on defense, that's a guy who I would take a risk on, and who I would value defense as a rim protector. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, obviously, Bamba needs to kind of add strength, and he'll need to work on his defending in space, kind of add some quickness. But I mean, just from a measurables and an athletic standpoint, I think his upside on the defensive end, he showed some really good instincts. He's always been praised as someone who's willing to learn. He's kind of willing to put in the work to get better. So I just think, from a pure upside standpoint, which is almost always what you're going for in the draft, I think the most important thing is upside. I would still have Bamba number 4. Jackson's a really close five for me. I've been a big Jackson fan since the beginning, so I could totally understand taking Jackson second, third, fourth, fifth, 100%. But I would still keep Bamba at the 4 spot.
So you see a team choosing him in the top 5?
I don't know if it'll happen, but if I was GM, I would. I'm not sure if it'll happen, but I personally would put him in the top 5.
So what separates Bamba from Jackson, in your opinion, since you do have him higher?
Well, obviously, length is a big part of it, and he's just. I think he's probably the better rim protector as it currently stands. Jackson has a stronger frame. He can probably move a bit better laterally, but in terms of defensive upside, I still think Bamba is the superior prospect.
Wow. And what about offensively? Jaren Jackson was a 40% 3-point shooter. And do you think that's sustainable at the next level? And do you think it'll translate to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, obviously his mechanics are a little funky, but they work, and I think as a pick and pop threat, he can score well around the post. He's a pretty good passer. I think Jackson just definitely brings more offensive value than Bamba, especially from day one. His first year, he's going to be a lot better on that end. But Bamba has shown flashes of a spot up jumper, and if he can kind of polish off his post game, he's already a good finisher at the rim. If he can kind of stretch his game out a bit and hit some knock down some spot up jumpers, I think he'll be able to contribute enough on that end to warrant his defensive upside being placing him that high on a board.
So Michael Porter Jr., people keep asking about him. What do you see in him, and does his back injury scare you?
Yeah, I mean, back injuries are always kind of scary. So I'm kind of waiting to hear what reports come out from teams kind of during pre-draft workouts. I think that'll give us a better sense of where he's at. But at the same time, I don't think you can put much into what he did show kind of towards the end of the year and those couple of tournament games he did play in, because he was coming off a back injury. His explosiveness obviously wasn't back yet, and he was out of it, rusty. He hadn't played with those guys all year. So I don't think you can really point to those kind of bad performances and drop him down your board too far. He's still number 6 or 7, I think, for me. So, and he was the consensus number 1 guy on a lot of boards coming into the season. So the talent's always been there, and I think NBA execs, just from their experience with him in AAU and high school ball, are still going to kind of value him as a high-end lottery pick.
Are you looking at any type of sleepers that can be this year's Donovan Mitchell?
That's always it's always hard to predict that kind of stuff, but one of my favorite guys is Troy Brown. I don't think he's not
Me
obviously
too, bro. I love Troy Brown.
he's not the scorer that Mitchell is or anything, but he's a versatile defender, can handle the ball, can shoot. Does a lot of nice things offensively. Kind of can play 3 or 4 different positions on the floor in spurts. So I really like Brown as someone who might not go in the lottery, but might end up playing like a lottery pick.
I actually disagree with you. I think when kind of how Donovan Mitchell coming in, he was probably like a 20th pick. And then, he was really impressing lots of teams. And till this day, till the day I die, I can't believe Detroit passed him up for for Luke. But
on my big board. So that was obviously a little low still, but I was always on the Mitchell train. So
right, you were, and you're on record. I mean, we can go back on CowboyKingdom.com, and you had him 7th. So I do remember that. And a month before on all my mock drafts, I had him going 10 to the Kings as well. So I was pretty high on him as well. And I was disappointed when they traded away number 10 for 15 and 20, which ultimately became a guy who I wasn't very high on, and I'm still not very high on, but I like him as a person, and Justin Jackson.
Yeah.
And then obviously Harry Giles, which if it pans out, it may very well work out. But if you ask me now, I would still like, even if Harry Giles turns out to be Harry Giles of old, I still rather have Donovan Mitchell now because it's a guard driven league.
Yeah.
And so again, it's all what ifs at this point. But
Yeah.
the nice thing is that I stick to my guns, and I would still choose Mitchell over that number one high school player in Harry Giles. But um, yeah, I'm super high as well on Troy Brown, man. My first breakdown of this season, my first video breakdown, I don't know if you watched it yet, but it was of Troy Brown. And I just love his versatility, his feel for the game. I see him as a point three, a secondary ball handler. He was 6'1" growing up. Then he had that huge growth spurt, which shows because he plays like a point guard, even though he's a lot bigger than that. And he reminds me a lot of Evan Turner. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty decent comp. Another guy who can kind of handle the ball, space the floor. I've had him going to Denver in a lot of mocks because I think putting him next to guys like Jokic and Millsap and Gary Harris would be a really cool kind of mix. I think he'd do really well there. I've had him going to San Antonio in a couple of mocks, which would obviously be great for them and him.
Oh
But
my
yeah,
God, it'd be great for both. Yeah, that'd be
yeah,
crazy.
I agree 100% with everything you just said.
So a lot of people are calling you Sam Amick Jr. And people are asking what you think of Kevin Knox.
I have Knox. I think I have him at 11. You know, he's probably one of the more raw guys in the lottery conversation. But I think toward the end of the year, he showed a lot of promising stuff as a cutter. He's obviously a good athlete, can play both forward spots. His mid-range game is nice. He has some nice, really, really nice moves around the rim. You know, the biggest thing for him is going to be if he can shoot three-pointers consistently. He was kind of off and on all year in that respect. So if he can get a consistent jumper and kind of polish off his handles, I think he's talented enough to be a top 10 guy in the draft.
He's talented enough, but the question is, will
Yeah,
he be a
that's
top 10?
fully
And I
true.
don't think he'll be a top 10. I actually have Troy Brown ranked a lot higher than him. And when it comes to small forwards slash power forwards, obviously you got Mikal Bridges, Miles Bridges, Troy Brown, which is in like that tier 3 type player. What do you think about Mikal and Miles? Just comparing both of them, and I've said multiple times that they're just different players.
Yeah,
Mikal's more of a 2-3, and Miles is more of a 3-4. But if it was up to you and you're sitting there at number 7, if you're Vlade Divac, would you go with Mikal or with Miles, knowing what you know and knowing what you have?
I'd probably go with Mikal. I think he's the better prospect at this point. He's another elite wing defender, which Sacramento doesn't really have right now. He can obviously shoot, work off the ball. He showed a little bit more off the dribble this year than he has in the past. So at this point, I just have Mikal a few spots higher on my board. So I would go best player available and pick Mikal over Miles.
What I mean, what makes him better, a better prospect in your eyes than Miles? Because I actually have Miles as the better prospect.
I mean, I don't think Miles is quite where Mikal is defensively. He obviously has the strength and the tools to be a really nice, versatile defender at a few different positions, but I think Mikal is just a few shades ahead of him in that respect. And obviously, I think Mikal is probably the better shooter right now, too. And just the importance of wing guys, true wing guys who can kind of defend a few positions on the perimeter, shoot the ball well, work. I really think Mikal is probably the better prospect right now.
Right on, right on. I don't really want to get into the Miles and Mikal argument because we can go on and on for hours. Obviously, I think Miles is a much better offensive player overall, has a better feel for the game, is a better handler on every level, can create his own shot, something Mikal really can't do. I don't know if he'll ever be able to do that because of his inability to really handle the rock. But I do want to talk about one last guy, and that's Zaire Smith. What do you think about him, man? I think that's my next video breakdown before I do more of the top tier talents.
Yeah, I think Smith is kind of one of those sleepers you were talking about earlier, who has a chance to kind of move into the lottery as more pre-draft workouts and stuff start happening. He's kind of one of those guys who can kind of shoot up draft boards. He's obviously an insane athlete, elite defensive potential on the perimeter. He has a lot of things to figure out offensively. He's not much of a shooter yet, but obviously just in transition, having an athlete like him, and he can defend a few different spots, long, solid frame. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a lottery pick in June.
I would not either, as a matter of fact. I'm actually writing that. I actually wrote that in my script that he's gonna be a lottery pick because the kid has an unbelievable motor. He has unreal athleticism, a lot like Gerald, like a lot like a young Gerald Green when he first came into the league. Um, does he remind you of anyone specifically right now?
Uh, I don't really know a good comp for him, but we've seen a lot of kind of raw wings that have kind of came
Maybe
into
like a
the
Josh
league.
Richardson from the Heat.
Yeah, like raw, long, athletic wings that might take a few years to really find their stride, but who eventually kind of add more to their offensive game, whether it be handles or a reliable shot. Like if he can get a jumper down, it's pretty hard to see him not finding success in the league because of how good he is defensively, how athletic he is. So I think he's kind of one of those guys you take a gamble on in the lottery and hope to develop.
So let's round this out with your official picks in your final four for the NBA, uh, and we'll go from there. So you got the Cavs and the Rockets, or who?
I would say Cavs and Warriors. I don't think the Rockets are gonna pull it off. I would say Cavs in six, Warriors in six, and Warriors in 4 or 5 in the finals.
Right on. That's similar to me. I have the Celtics in seven, and then I have the Warriors in six. Uh, and I say that because the Rockets, to me, literally need to play perfect basketball
Yeah.
for 4 games if they were to beat the Warriors, and I just don't see that. Is that where you kind of stand with the Rockets?
Yeah, I mean Houston's like a historically good team, but Golden State's just a tier above everyone at this point. When they're on, they're pretty much impossible to stop. So I can't see them losing 4 games. Even if
Yeah.
Houston plays well, it's just hard to picture them losing 4 times in the same series.
Yeah, and then and I think the big advantage for Golden State is if their shots aren't falling, they can rely on their defense. And I just don't see that as clear with the Rockets, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think the
So
Rockets are a solid defensive team, but Golden State's one of, if not the best, defensive teams in the league.
exactly, and that's why I have them winning in six, unless we get like a crazy injury with one of the big four from Golden State. Then it's more of a fighting 50-50 shot. But as of right now, I have the Warriors in six. But what should Kings fans, NBA fans expect from you in terms of your great in-depth stories on the website and on Sixer Sense in the next coming weeks?
Yeah, well, now that I have a new computer and stuff, and it's kind of summer, so I'll have more free time. Hopefully, I can do some more draft stuff for Cowbell, and we have stuff coming out every day at Sixer Sense. We'll have draft stuff, free agency stuff, all kinds of great content at Sixer Sense. We have a lot of really great writers providing a pretty wide variety of opinions. So I would love for anyone who's watching to check it out at thesixersense.com. And hopefully I'll be doing a lot more at Cowbell this summer with draft stuff and maybe in some free agency stuff there as well.
And where can people tweet at you and follow you on all social media platforms?
At Klein NBA, KLINE NBA on Twitter would be your best bet for social media.
Right on, brother. Thank you so much for your time. I always appreciate that. Got to have you on soon again. And then when all the pre-draft workouts start rolling out and I'm there covering them, I have a lot better sense on these guys, you know, which is why I was so high on Mitchell when he did come to Sacramento last year. And, you know, his high character and his defensive intensity really stood out to me. And, you know, well, the rest is history. I don't want to dwell on it too much because it hurts knowing that the Kings had a shot at this kid. But it is what it is, brother. Appreciate your time, man. And I'll catch you on the next one. Again, guys, if you guys want to follow Cowbell Kingdom or Basketball Zone, make sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Cowbell_Kingdom or Basketball Zone Official. If you guys enjoy this type of content, make sure to subscribe, share it with your fellow NBA fans, and I'll see you guys on the next video.
All right. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, brother. Take care.